The Underdark is in chaos, and the only thing that can bring balance is the strength and leadership of the Drow. But which Drow house will bring control and order to the Underdark? In Tyrants of the Underdark, you'll play as one of 4 leaders of a Drow house who is trying to gain power through control of the Underdark. You'll build your deck, deploy troops, and promote people to your inner circle, all while vying for control over some key locations to earn resources until eventually you reach the endgame, and the player with the most victory points wins. Let's take a look at how to set up the game, and then take a look at how to play. So first things first, you're going to put the game board down and the market board in easy reach of everyone. In a 2-player game, you're only going to focus on the center of the board. In a 3-player game, you pick one of the 2 outer areas of the game to play, and in a 4-player game, you use all 3. Other than that, everything else is the same during setup, and today we're going to show a 2-player setup. Next, choose 2 of the market half decks to combine and shuffle together to form your market deck. Each half deck is 40 cards and features a symbol at the bottom left to let you know which deck of the 6 decks that you're going to be using. For your first game, it's recommended to use the Drow and Dragon half decks, so let's grab those. Next, you're going to put the Priestess of Loth and the House Guard cards face up in the market board space that matches their name. If you're playing with the Demons half deck, you'll need the Insane Outcast cards as well. Then, after you've shuffled your market cards, you're going to put the top 6 of the market cards onto the market board face up. This is going to form your market. Then, we're going to place white troops in all of the troop spaces marked with an X on the portion of the game map that you're playing with. After you've placed your white troops, you're going to grab the site control markers and place them in the spaces on the game map with the total control side face up. Then randomly decide who's going to go first and give that player the first player marker. Then each player will pick a placemat and troops of the same color and put them in front of them. Take your starting deck of 7 nobles and 3 soldiers, shuffle them together, then place it on your deck space and draw 5 cards. Then finally, starting with the first player, each player deploys a troop in any starting site on the game map that is not already taken by another player. Starting sites are those with black boxes. And that's all you need for setup. Now let's take a look at how to play. Tyrants of the Underdark is played over a series of rounds, in which each player takes a turn, starting with the first player and going clockwise until you reach the end of the game, which occurs when a player puts down their final troop, or the market deck runs out. First, let's look at what you do on your turn. On your turn, you'll do the following any number of times in any order that you want. Play a card from your hand to gain the resources or take the actions listed on the card. Play a card from your hand to gain the resources or take actions listed on the card, and expend resources from your pool to take one of the basic actions. Then at the end of your turn, you promote cards to your inner circle if you played a card that told you to do so, gain victory points for the site control markers, discard all the cards that you played and any remaining cards in your hand, then draw back up to 5 cards. If at any point you need to draw a card but you have none in your deck, shuffle your discard pile to form a new deck. So now that we have the basics of a turn down, let's take a look at the parts of a card. Since playing cards are the majority of what you'll do on your turn, it's important to know what you're looking at. Each card has the following information: name in the top left, cost, which is how much influence you must expend to recruit the card, aspect, which shows the aspects of Drow society that it represents, minion type, which shows the type of creature it is, deck symbol, which shows the half deck that it belongs to, rules text, which tells you what the card does, story text, which gives some insight to the minion story but has no in-game value, deck VP value, which shows how many victory points you'll earn at the end of the game if this card is in your deck, hand, or discard pile, inner circle VP value, which shows how many victory points you'll earn at the end of the game if this card has been promoted to your inner circle, and finally the rarity, which shows how many copies of this card are present in the half deck. During the game, when you play cards, you'll earn at least one of the resources in the game: power and influence. Influence allows you to recruit cards from the market board, and represents your influence over the denizens of the Underdark. Power, on the other hand, is your control over the Underdark game map. With power, you can deploy your troops, assassinate any troops, and return spies from your sites. Resources don't carry over between rounds, so anything that you don't spend on your turn is lost when you end it. When you play a card, you lay it down face up in front of you. Then you follow all of the card's instructions in the order that they're presented, adding any resources the card grants you to your pool. A good chunk of the cards will give you resources and/or tell you to take an action, which we'll look at later. Some cards have a cost to activate their abilities, and this is represented with an arrow. If you see this symbol, that means you have to pay the cost first to activate its ability. Something to note, you can choose to play a card and not pay its cost, which means that you won't gain the effect. Now let's look at the game map itself. Many of the things that we'll talk about in this section mention presence. You have presence at any site where you have a spy, troop, or a troop adjacent to that site, or at any troop space on a route if that space is adjacent to a site or space where you have a troop. Troop spaces are the only spaces on the game map that may contain a troop. They're easy to tell because their circle is just big enough for the troop markers. White troops are troops that don't belong to a drow house and only serve to get in your way. When you remove these troops, their space becomes available for any player to place troops. Sites have multiple troop spaces grouped together within a single larger box. They typically have a name and a VP value, and larger sites will have a site control marker that is taken by the player who gains control of that site. Control of a site goes to the player with the most troops present than any other single color, and you lose control when the number of your troops becomes tied or less than another color. Total control is represented by all troop spaces of a site being filled with your color and no enemy spies being present. For sites that have a control marker, once you gain control over a site, you gain the marker. And if you ever get total control over a site with a marker, you flip the marker to its total control side. If control over a site ever swaps between players, and that site has a marker, the marker is passed to the player with control, or if it's tied, it's returned to the site. Once on each of your turns, each site marker you control gives you an effect based on the level of control that you have. Routes connect sites together and have one or more troop spaces linking to the sites. Finally, we're going to go over actions. There are various actions that you can take during the game, and the basic ones are listed on your playmat. We'll go over the basic actions, and more actions can be found in the rulebook, with the specifics on when they can be used. First action is deploy a troop. You may deploy a troop where you have presence. To deploy a troop, take one or more troops from your barracks and place them on the empty troop space. If you ever have no troops on the board, you may deploy from anywhere on the board space that has an empty troop space. If you take this action with no troops to place, you instead gain 1 victory point. Next action is assassinate a troop. You may assassinate a troop only when you have presence. To assassinate a troop, take it from the troop space and place it in your trophy hall. Note that you cannot assassinate your own troops. And finally, return a spy. You may return an enemy spy only where you have presence. To return an enemy spy, return it from the troop space or site to its owner's barracks. And that's all you need to know to get started. There are more actions within the rulebook should they come up during play, and once you get to the end of the game, you can use the included score sheet to tally up who has the most victory points, and that player gains control over the Underdark. Until the next struggle for power begins with your next game. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, you can leave a like, comment, or subscribe. We also have some information in our description about our Ko-fi page. And come back next time for more rules videos and how to plays. Bye.